Well, so I've decided for my debate to choose a rather baffling phenomenon that I have noticed in the news in the all of 8 days since Keir Starmer won his smacking great landslide last week. British journalists have been really struggling to disguise their glee. When Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, went over to Washington for the NATO summit, he was absolutely bombarded with questions of the "why are you the greatest Prime Minister we've ever had" variety. There were people who were asking him, "Have you got used to calling yourself Prime Minister yet?" This sort of thing. The broadcaster Andrew Marr made some rather extraordinary remarks on the Question Time, which I guess it must have been the day after or moments after the election, and he said that for the first time in many people's lives, Britain had suddenly been transformed into an oasis of calm and stability, which seems like rather high praise for someone who had been in charge for maybe, an hour or two at that point. And then from the proper, simple toadying to something even more inexplicable, there has even been a certain amount of thirst emanating from certain sections of the press. The journalist Caitlin Moran, writing in The Times, wrote an extraordinary column where she talked about how Keir Starmer had turbocharged her arousal levels and how she and her friends all fancy Keir Starmer, and there's something about his competence that he exudes that is just so devilishly sexy. The reason I bring all of this up is because, firstly, I cannot imagine similar scenes playing out for the previous administration. Sometimes the Daily Express gets criticised for being too pro-Boris, but it's almost as if the entire journalistic landscape has turned into cheerleaders for Keir Starmer. And also, can a media cohort that is clearly this thirsty and therefore certifiable really hold the government to account properly, as you would expect?
For our older viewers, can you just explain what thirsty means?
Oh, sorry. It means, I don't know what I'm allowed to say it. Horny. There we go. I've said it.
That's fine. Look, Maddie, I'm sorry, but you sound like a sore loser. The fact is...
Just because she's not
I don't fancy Keir Starmer.
I think...
That's an outrageous thing to say.
I think Sir Keir and Lady Starmer are a particularly attractive couple. They look very glamorous.
She is.
Now you're certifiable. She's gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but him, I'm not sure.
There's a beautiful photograph when they were at the White House on the balcony, and they look incredibly glamorous together. And also, they look madly in love, which is, much better than can be said for some
He
couples
sounds
in
like
politics.
Caitlin Moran, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
I think
and also, I'm sorry, this is not to do with being a sore loser. I think the Conservative Party got deservedly spanked and they deserved it. I'm not suggesting that this was unfair or anything like this. What I am suggesting is that you need to see a bit of consistency and also a bit of journalistic integrity. And frankly, I don't think that in previous decades you would have had broadcasters asking the kind of softball questions to the Prime Minister. You can't imagine like Maurice Stewart in the 90s being like, have you got used to calling yourself Prime Minister?
It's absolutely understandable that you want to know what it's like for someone to take that job on. That's human interest. And I would just point
reality
out,
TV is what it is.
It's not new that people are having these thoughts or reporting these thoughts about a Prime Minister. He was called Dishy Rishi when he was Chancellor.
I didn't read anything quite of the thirst levels of Caitlin Moran's column.
You didn't have, Isabel Oakeshott, or dare I say Madeline Grant, writing how, Dishy Rishi makes her want to, I don't know.
Well, luckily he doesn't, so you wouldn't have read that from me.
I mean, look, I found the whole thing bizarre, not least because I find him really a most unattractive man. He's not tall enough, that's the end of that for me. But I think it's not the point. I think your point is absolutely right, Madeline. How can we take our journalists seriously when we know that they're secretly just sitting there fawning and, thinking, oh, I wish. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I also think that if this was the other way round, if this was male journalists talking about a female Prime Minister, there'd be outrage that it was misogynistic claptrap.
And Susan says, Madeline is great. Any woman that thinks Starmer is sexy needs an eye test. The shallow press are a disgrace to this country.
Gosh.
Do you think they're a disgrace?
I mean, what a strong opinion. I think there are different sections of the press that blow smoke up different parts of politicians in the political spectrum.
Are they overwhelmingly anti-conservative?
Well, no, because I think about one of your colleagues at The Telegraph, Maddie, a chap called Alistair Heath, who I think I just read some of his stuff sometimes and I think, God, this is just so overly complimentary. For example, of Liz Truss's mini budget, he described it as the best budget ever. It was not the best
At least
budget
he didn't
ever.
go on about how much he wanted to...
by any stretch of the imagination.
But
So
he
all
didn't
I'm
say
saying
she was
is,
fit.
Yeah,
all
he
I'm
didn't
saying-
say, I can't wait to take her home.
No, that would have been too much. But the point that I'm making
Yeah,
is
that's my point.
that different sections of the media complement different types of politicians. And why are we getting angry? Are we getting angry because it's Keir Starmer and not
So the other thing is,
Suella Braverman?
When
Like,
Alistair
what's the
Heath
reason?
wrote that rather ill-fated column about the Liz Truss budget, when the budget imploded, he was mocked and ridiculed for that column. He got it in the neck from everybody. Whereas I think this stuff is really getting a free pass because there are so many of them at it and asking stupid questions about the football and also acting like at this early stage in his career we can actually say whether he's competent or has been an effective Prime Minister. He's been doing it for 8 days.
And what I would say, that fawning shot of them on the Prime Minister's official plane, you know, the Royal Air Force plane that the royal family also use, and they're sort of looking over him, and it looks like one of those sort of Rembrandt paintings or something like that.
I said this in my sketch. I said it looked like
I'm
a
sorry,
caravan.
I wasn't stealing
we've
your...
had the great idea. We have great minds, great minds. Really great minds.
But read Maddie's piece in the Telegraph. But, you know, I just sort of thought, where's that accountability going to be? Where's that media scrutiny going to be?
they
We're
were
not going to
smiling
get
in
it
a
from
pitch with the
people,
Prime Minister on a
journalists like
plane.
Benjamin
You're
Butterworth.
utterly ridiculous.
I'll tell you that
there
much.
are endless photographs of prime ministers on that plane with journalists huddled around them like that. I think the fact is that you need to accept that Britain is actually quite relieved to have a competent, decent.
Where was Harry Cullen?
All right, we'll leave that there.